When I use the phrase white privilege, I'm not saying you have never experienced hardship or struggles. You have not worked hard. You have had an easy life. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in societies shaped by colonial histories, whiteness has been positioned closely to power, safety, and opportunity.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Represented Podcast. If you're new here, my name is Annie Gishuru. I'm a racial equity coach for online business owners such as coaches, course creators, and consultants, and I'm so glad you're here. Last week, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with the wonderful Kemi Nekvapil, and so many of you have already shared that conversation landed for you just where it needed to. Thank you so much for reaching out and sharing that with me. If you haven't listened to that conversation, you need to press pause and go back and listen to that. It's all about grounded success, and there is so much to take away from that. But today, my friend, I'm back with a solo episode, and I want to bring you into something very real that came up in my group coaching calls for my program, Represented, last week. We were talking about white privilege, not as a concept from a textbook, but as something that lives in your body, in your choices, in your business. And some of the students shared things like how they feel about it. I hate it when this privilege disadvantages people of color. I don't want to move ahead while others are being left behind. I wish I could just have equity right now and be done with all of this. And maybe you felt something similar. There was this deep desire to refuse privilege, to slow down the process of having that kind of privilege, almost as a way of trying to even the playing ground. A sense of, if my privilege is part of the problem, then I don't want anything to do with it. I want to speak directly to that tension today because it is honest and it's vulnerable. And it's also a turning point because you wishing that you do not have privilege does not change the systems that give it to you. And slowing yourself down does not automatically lift people of color up. What creates change, and hear me when I say this, is learning to use that privilege in responsible, intentional ways. So we're going to look at white privilege from two angles today. Number one, how to use your privilege to support clients of color inside your business. And number two, how to use privilege to support people of color in the wider community. So business and personal, both of them matter. Both influence each other, and I'll be able to illustrate that for you. So before we get practical, I want to ground us in a little bit of context. What does white privilege mean? The phrase itself, white privilege, can feel loaded For some people, it feels like an accusation. For others, it brings up shame, guilt, or even defensiveness. And I have to tell you, I've seen this firsthand myself. When I use the phrase white privilege, I'm not saying you have never experienced hardship or struggles. You have not worked hard. You have had an easy life. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that in societies shaped by colonial histories, whiteness has been positioned closely to power, safety, and opportunity. So when we think about laws, institutions, media, education, even theology, they have historically centered white people as a default and everyone else as other. That history did not disappear. It lives on, and we see it now. We see it in housing, law enforcement, employment, financial access, education, the healthcare system. I mean, the list goes on. And yes, yes, we even see it in online business spaces as well. So, white privilege is about the unearned ease that comes from being read as white in those systems, the benefit of the doubt, the assumption of competence, the freedom to move through the world without your race being a constant question mark. If you are a white coach, a consultant, or course creator, that privilege shows up in ways you might not notice because it has always been part of your identity. Maybe you are more likely to be invited onto certain podcasts or platforms. Maybe you are seen as safe or professional by default. Maybe your marketing is never questioned as too political when you speak about certain issues. You did not ask for those advantages, I know, but you do have a choice about what you do with them. You cannot give your privilege away, obviously. You cannot put it down on the side of the road and walk away. What you can do is own it and use it to open doors that would otherwise stay closed for people of color. And this is what we're going to do next. I want to talk to you about using your privilege to support clients of color. So let's start in your business because most of you, that is one of the main places you hold influence. I want to offer some tangible ways white privilege can be used in service of your clients of color rather than at their expense. So, number one, creating genuine, safer spaces, not just welcoming language. So, many white business owners tell me, my space is welcoming to everyone, Annie. But when we take a deeper dive into their processes, their content, and their group culture, there are things that signal this was not really designed with people of color in mind. Using your privilege well begins with asking, how safe do my clients of color actually feel in my containers? And that might look like learning and using correct pronunciation of names and checking your understanding instead of avoiding it. And I know that sounds so simple. And it's like, yeah, I do that all the time, Annie. But let me just tell you this. Getting somebody's name right is so important because it signals that you've taken the time to understand, you've taken the time to try to get it right, you care, and that sense of otheringness is no longer there. They're already othered in so many other ways. Getting their name right is so important because that is something that they live with every day. It is their identification. Getting it right matters. It might also look like acknowledging that conversations about race, identity, and belonging are allowed in your containers, not something that will be brushed aside because it feels too heavy. So, gone are the days when it was okay to say, I'm white and cannot speak to matters to do with race. That's for people of color to speak on. Personally, I feel that's classic avoidance behavior. And you can speak on equity because, as a space holder and business owner, you can't push this work back to people of color. You're in a position of leadership. You're holding spaces. People are coming in, they're learning from you. The onus, the responsibility is on you to be able to address these matters to do with race. Another way this might look like creating a safer space, being mindful of how often you center white clients' stories as examples and perspectives by habit. Because I know this is probably what you have access to, but it doesn't have to be the only lens shared. Diverse perspectives makes the space so much more richer and a chance to introduce concepts that haven't been considered before. Now, I'll unpack this a little bit more in point number two, but having a safer space doesn't automatically mean that no harm will ever happen. What it does is signal that you're committed to repair, to listening, and to not placing the burden of education on your clients of color. Your privilege means you're more likely to be listened to when you set that culture. So, my friend, use it. Number two, design or rather redesign your containers with more than one lived experience in mind. And I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Many coaching programs are built around a default client who is almost always white, Western, and relatively well resourced. Think about that ideal client avatar. The frameworks you teach, the examples you use, the expectations you set all tend to reflect that. To use your privilege well here, ask yourself, whose reality is this program built around? Who would have to work twice as hard to make this fit their life? Where might my content be assuming access, safety, or cultural norms that are not universal? And when you ask yourself these questions, you might want to audit your curriculum and add examples that include clients of color and global perspectives. Name explicitly that structural barriers exist. They do. So your clients of color are not gaslit into thinking it is just a mindset issue and they're trying so hard to incorporate what your framework is, but they just feel like this is a mindset thing. It is not. You need to explicitly name the structural barriers that exist so that we normalize this from the get-go. And then build in space for people to adapt your frameworks instead of expecting everyone to follow one template. And we are very much living in the times of just give me the template, give me the word for word that I need to use. But that doesn't work for everybody. One size doesn't fit all. It doesn't look good, actually. It'll look good on some people, but it doesn't look good on everybody. So, as you create your frameworks, how can you build them for adaptation so that people can indeed benefit from what you've created, but it doesn't mean that we're all following one set template. This is where your awareness becomes part of the coaching itself. And people get so much more from your container, from your skill, other than just that one perspective. Number three, Use your access to create opportunities and visibility. One of the clearest ways white privilege shows up in online business is through access. You may have easier access to perhaps podcasts, speaking opportunities, affiliate partnerships, and higher priced spaces. And you can use that. You can absolutely use that. And here's how you can do that. Recommending your clients of color when opportunities come up. And perhaps those are opportunities that are not quite fully aligned for you. Recommend them, inviting them as guest experts or panelists in your programs or events. If you are hosting online retreats, for example, for your high ticket programs, I want you to think right now, how diverse is your lineup of speakers? And again, I'm not talking about inviting just that one person of color to speak to DEI issues. No, I'm talking about a person of color in another field where they are skilled, such as marketing, finance, copywriting, even right now, AI. Another way could be by featuring their stories as case studies in ways that fully honor their humanity, not just their success. Introducing them to other leaders in your networks who are a good fit. You have a platform. That platform can widen who gets seen, who gets heard, and actually who gets hired. When you choose not to only center white voices, you are interrupting a very old pattern where whiteness has had the microphone by default. So, how can we take it back? Number four, build financial equity into your offers where you can. Privilege often shows up in money. If you are resourced in particular ways, you might have more room to make decisions about pricing and access. This doesn't mean undercharging. Please hear me when I say this. It doesn't mean undercharging. It means asking, where can I make this program more accessible to people who are systemically disadvantaged without making them feel like an afterthought? Here are some ideas. Scholarships specifically for people of color with a clear criteria and a respectful application process. Payment plans that do not punish people with higher rates. And when you can, low cost or free offers designed with marginalized communities in mind. And then, once people of color are in the room, treat them as full paying clients. Treat them as you would your full paying clients. Do not expect any extra emotional labor from them because perhaps they came through a more accessible way. And you're listening to this, you're a heart-led online business owner, and you're like, Annie, I could never do that. Of course, I'll always treat them fairly. And I try to treat everybody the same. But it's important when you are aware of this so that you take the extra step to ensure that you're being as inclusive as possible. Financial equity is one way to redistribute some of what you have received because of both your individual work and the systems that have favored you. Okay, now I want to zoom out of your business and look at your everyday life because how you talk, how you spend, how you vote, hire, and relate outside of business also shapes the world your clients of color live in. So, here are some practical ways to use your privilege in your personal world. Number one, speak up in white rooms. There are moments where a comment is made in a family chat, in a group of friends, or in a professional space. And everyone kind of looks away, just feeling, oh, you shouldn't have said that. that cringe moment. And if people of color are in that space, they often notice. They also often know that if they speak up, there may be a cost for them. Your privilege means the cost for you is usually lower. Using your privilege might look like saying something like, I did not find that joke okay. That's a stereotype. It's not accurate and it harms people. Another really powerful thing that you could say, have we thought about who is not in this room? And how might that affect this decision that we're about to make? You do not have to become a full-time educator of every person in your life, but choosing silence every time keeps the load on people of color to be the ones who are always pushing back. Even a small interruption sends a signal. That signal, racism is not neutral here. It will be questioned. Number two, share resources thoughtfully. You have access to books, podcasts like this one, courses, and educators who are doing powerful work on race and equity. Using your privilege can mean bringing those resources into white dominant spaces where they might not otherwise be found. Paying people of color for their work, then sharing it instead of expecting that constant free labor. Citing and crediting ideas. Ooh, this is a big one. From Black scholars and other scholars of color when you use them in your own teaching. Because as you begin to integrate different perspectives, you're bringing in different ideas. Cite them and credit them. Don't take them as your own. Knowledge has always been part of how power works. So sharing knowledge from the margins into the center is one way to shift that. Number three, direct your money and opportunities towards people of color. Money carries influence. Money is energy. Where you spend it and where you hire shapes who grows and consequently who struggles. Some ways to use that is hire service providers of color when their skills align with what you need. Buy from businesses owned by people of color. I know we say this all the time, but sincerely, do it. Support organizations led by communities of color who are doing justice work on the ground. This is a great way of recognizing that the playing field has never been level and choosing to invest in those who have been systemically blocked from opportunity. Number four, widen your own world. Privilege can create bubbles. It is very possible to live, to work, and to socialize mostly with people whose lives look similar to yours, especially if you are white in a white dominant country, right? So, using your privilege well can mean intentionally widening your circles. And that might look like listening deeply to the stories of people of color without centering your own defensiveness. Reading history that tells the truth. Let me say that again. Reading history that tells the truth about colonization, migration, and resistance. Following creators, writers, and leaders of color as ongoing commitment, not something trendy that you pick up in one season and drop in the next. No, something that is just an ongoing commitment because this allows your worldview to be stretched and it needs to, and sometimes to be humbled and most definitely to be deepened. And number five, talk to your children and your peers. So if you're raising children, mentoring others, or leading communities, You have influence over how people understand fairness and dignity. Using that influence can look like naming racism when it appears in the media, movies, or school stories. Teaching children that fair does not always mean everyone gets the same. Sometimes it means those who have been disadvantaged get extra support. Because if you've been following me for any amount of time, you will know what I preach about equity. That's equity. And having honest conversation with peers about what you're learning and unlearning, not just sharing your I did a course once, kind of badge or mantra, but having honest conversations. And this is one of the things we were talking about inside my group program, that you have so much power in your white friends hearing you more than they would hear a black educator. They already have a relationship with you. They trust you. They are in community with you. So what you say is likely to land a little bit deeper with them than just an educator who's been talking about these issues. Privilege gets passed down when it goes unquestioned. But awareness, my friend, can also be passed down when you choose to talk about it. Okay, now I want to circle back to where we started with those vulnerable comments from my group coaching calls. Those feelings of, I don't want to have this white privilege. I feel guilty that my life seems easier. I do not want to move ahead while others are not progressing fast enough. If that's you, I want you to hear this. Your discomfort is not a sign that you should stop or even the desire to stand still. It's a sign that you care. And honestly, that you care deeply. The invitation is not to shrink yourself or to hide your success or to punish yourself for what has been given to you without asking for it. The invitation is to hold your privilege in the light and ask, how can this be used to widen access? Who can I bring along with me? As I look back, as I am making progress moving forward, what doors am I opening? Where can I share, recommend, support, speak up, or change my approach? And here is the sobering fact. You're going to get it wrong at times, maybe even many times. You're going to look back and realize, I could have handled that differently. And that is part of the journey. And that's what makes this work so much more uh, meaningful. Because we can't just get everything right all the time, even though we want to. We can't always do things in a way that makes everybody happy and we're just ticking the boxes. And as much as our minds know that, it takes our hearts a little bit of time to catch up. What matters is that you keep moving, keep listening, keep aligning your actions with your values. Let your values be your compass. Using your white privilege well shouldn't be a one-off decision. It's a lifelong practice of noticing where you have unearned ease, then choosing to turn that ease into support, into solidarity, and structural change. And my friend, you do not have to do that on your own. In fact, it's a mammoth task to undertake on your own. That's why Represented exists. It's a 10-week program for online business owners who want to build racially equitable businesses with intention, with integrity, and with care. Inside Represented, we have the kinds of conversations I have shared with you today. We sit with the fear around privilege, that discomfort, the worry about getting it wrong, the questions about how to turn good intentions into real change in your business and your life, and a whole lot more. And the best part, you're surrounded by other leaders who are asking the same questions and who are willing to do this work alongside you, not just alone at their desk. And so, if today's episode has stirred something in you, I would love to invite you to join the waitlist for the next round of Represented, which will be happening in April 2026. It is the best way to hear when the doors open for Represented and and you'll also be the first to know about bonuses and special updates, all the good stuff. And you can join that waitlist at anigishu.com/represented. That link is in the show notes. Until next time, take care.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented from coast to coast.